Chapter 1. The Lavender and Lies. The scent of lavender and expensive, crushing obligation clung to the air, thicker than the white silk draping the rafters of the White Fang pack house. Amelia stood before the altar, her breath held tight in her chest. The imported wedding gown, a magnificent cage of beadwork and lace, felt impossibly heavy. 22 years of being a quiet, dutiful Omega, the ward of the Alpha, had led to this single, spectacular moment, her mating ceremony to Alpha Lucas. This wasn't a choice, it was a transaction. This marriage would solidify Lucas's power and prevent further territorial disputes with the northern packs. Amelia knew her role. She was the political linchpin, the silent, agreeable Luna. "Smile, Amelia," whispered Elder Maeve, her voice sharp despite the gentle words. "The council is watching. Show gratitude." Amelia forced her lips into the radiant shape of a happy mate. But beneath the facade, her wolf was whimpering, a deep, primal hurt twisting in her core. She had searched Lucas's gray eyes countless times, hoping for a flicker of warmth, but found only the cold calculation of a man assessing property value. The crowd hushed as Lucas, tall and impossibly striking in his dark ceremonial armor, stepped onto the platform. He was every inch the Alpha, broad-shouldered, magnetic, and utterly ruthless. The entire hall felt the palpable pressure of his presence. He reached for her hands, and his touch was formal. No spark, no bond-forming heat, just the impersonal clasp of a business partner. "We are gathered today," the officiating elder began, his voice echoing, "to witness the joining of two souls and two packs, blessed by the moon goddess, a bond destined by fate." Amelia watched Lucas's jaw tighten. She saw the minute tremor in his hand, a sign of inner conflict she couldn't interpret. Was it nerves or repulsion? Just as the elder prepared to ask the sacred vows, Lucas wrenched his hand away from hers. The sound was stark and loud in the silence of the hall. Lucas turned, not to Amelia, but to the assembled guests. His voice, usually a deep rumble of command, cracked with a strange mix of forced relief and brutal disdain. "Stop." The word hit the crowd like a shockwave. Whispers instantly erupted, freezing Amelia's blood. Lucas faced the elder, his expression hardening into cold steel. "There will be no mating ceremony today. The goddess has spoken to my soul, and I cannot lie to my pack or to her." He turned back to Amelia, and his gray eyes finally held emotion, cold, cutting rejection. "Amelia," he announced, his voice carrying clearly to every ear, "you are rejected. You do not possess the ferocity, the ambition, or the raw power required to stand as the Luna of the White Fang pack. I require a partner who is steel, not silk." A collective gasp swept the hall. Amelia felt the air leave her lungs, the fragile hope she'd harbored dissolving instantly. The silence was only broken when Lucas's eyes landed on Seraphina, a stunning, battle-hardened she-wolf standing among the warriors. "My true Luna stands there," Lucas declared, pulling Seraphina forward. "A warrior, a leader, someone who will fight for this pack, not merely look pretty in its shadow." The humiliation was a physical agony, a sharp, white pain that eclipsed every other sense. Amelia could hear the cruel murmurs, the shocked gasps, the triumphant snarls of Seraphina. She was stripped bare, her dignity, her future, and her very sense of belonging ripped away in a single, public act of betrayal. Without thought, fueled only by the desperate need to escape the thousand judging eyes, Amelia gathered her ruined skirt in her hands. She turned, not toward the back exit, but toward the nearest shadow, bolting past the confused guards and crashing through the grand oak doors. She ran, not as a mate or a Luna, but as a terrified, wounded Omega, tearing herself away from the pack that had just thrown her away. Her only destination was the blinding, impenetrable darkness of the forbidden territories beyond the White Fang lands. She was running toward ruin, but anything was better than the betrayal she left behind. Chapter 2. The Forest of Shadows. The rejection felt like a physical tearing. A white-hot blade plunged into Amelia's chest, twisting and severing the fragile, hopeful thread of her mating bond. It wasn't just heartbreak. It was the primal agony of her wolf being discarded, screaming silently in her mind. She ran, heedless of the path. The imported silk of her wedding gown, meant for a gilded ballroom, was now a tattered disgrace, snagging on thorns and ripping against sharp rocks. Every frantic, clumsy stride carried her deeper into the forbidden territories, a dense, desolate expanse of sharp shadows and broken trees that even the bravest pack wolves avoided. Amelia's pack training was useless here. She was raised for diplomacy, not survival. The pain of her lungs burning and her legs cramping was nothing compared to the crushing humiliation that propelled her forward. She had to get away, beyond the reach of Lucas's scorn and the pitying glances of the council members. The forbidden territories lived up to their name. The silence was thick, predatory, broken only by the rasp of Amelia's ragged breath. The ground was treacherous, littered with bleached bones, a grim testament to the rogues and wanderers who never returned. She didn't realize she was crying until she tasted salt mixing with the dirt smeared across her face. As the sun began to dip, painting the sky in violent shades of orange and bruised purple, the chilling exhaustion finally seized her. Amelia collapsed behind a gnarled, ancient oak, the expensive lace now soaking up the cold, damp earth. Her inner wolf was a wounded thing, huddled and whimpering. "I am nothing," the dark thought whispered, echoing Lucas's cruel words. Too weak, too soft. She should have hidden better. The rustle of dry leaves was too deliberate, too heavy for a deer. A shadow detached itself from the gloom, a massive, scarred rogue wolf, his coat matted and his eyes gleaming with the unmistakable hunger of a predator. He was alone, unhinged, and smelling the despair radiating off her like a beacon. He didn't bother to shift fully. He stood on two legs, a monstrous half-form, snarling. "What have we here?" the rogue rasped, his voice raw and wet. "A pretty morsel in a white shroud. Did your alpha toss you out, little Omega?" Panic seized Amelia's throat, suffocating her. She scrambled backward, the earth tearing at her palms. She tried to call her own wolf, but only a terrified squeak escaped. This was it, the end she had unknowingly run toward. The rogue lunged, closing the distance in a horrifying blur. Just as his claws tore through the silk above her shoulder, a sound cut through the forest, not a snarl, but a low, resonant growl that shook the very roots of the oak tree. It was a sound of absolute, unquestionable dominance. The rogue froze instantly, his predatory snarl turning into a whimper of pure terror. From the deepest shadow, a figure emerged. He was colossal, defined by an effortless, terrifying power. It was Alpha Kale. Chapter 3. The Rogue's Den. The deep, territorial growl from the shadows instantly reduced the attacking rogue to a cowering brute. The scent of absolute authority, raw, untamed, and infinitely more dangerous than the White Fang Pack's polished command, suffocated the air. Alpha Kale stepped fully into the fading light. He was enormous, even in his half-shifted form, his silhouette thick with muscle, and his dark fur was scarred and wild, a stark contrast to Lucas's immaculate presentation. Kale didn't speak to the rogue. He simply met his eyes, and with a terrifying, silent display of dominance, the rogue whimpered, dropped to all fours, and scrambled back into the trees. He didn't need to be told twice. Then Kale's gaze settled on Amelia. She felt the scrutiny like a physical burn. She was still pressed against the damp earth, shivering, her wedding gown a mockery of her status. "A White Fang Omega," Kale's voice was a low rasp, rougher than stone, carrying the weight of countless forgotten winters. "In the middle of my woods, what foolishness brought the princess here?" Amelia struggled to her feet, ignoring the throbbing pain in her ankle. She refused to beg. "I was rejected," she managed, her voice hoarse but steady. "I ran." Kale's dark eyes narrowed, sweeping over the fine silk and the tear tracks on her face. Rejection is often a favor in disguise. It means someone finally decided you weren't worth the trouble. The dismissal was colder than any winter wind. "You bring the scent of soft living and pack politics. I have no use for either." "I am not asking for use," Amelia retorted, surprised by the firmness of her own voice. "I am asking for space to survive." Kale stared at her for a long, silent moment. She didn't flinch. Perhaps the public humiliation had burned away her last vestiges of fear. Finally, he gave a curt nod. Fine, but my camp is not a sanctuary for the heartbroken. You earn your breath here. The journey to the rogue's den was a grueling trek. Kale moved with the predatory grace of a hunter, barely glancing back to ensure Amelia followed. The camp itself was a jarring sight, not a neat clearing of cabins, but a collection of rough shelters hidden deep within a canyon, populated by scarred, hardened wolves. Every eye turned to Amelia, the strange, delicate figure still wearing the remnants of a wedding dress. Whispers, sharp and judgmental, followed her like flies. A hulking female rogue, Marga with a deeply scarred face, stepped forward, her teeth bared. A rejected Omega. She'll just draw the pack patrols here. She's a liability, Alpha. Kale didn't flinch. She is labor, he stated simply. Until she proves otherwise, she is nothing. Marga, she reports to you. Marga snorted, her eyes glinting with malice. The Omega needs to earn her keep, then. We have a kill that needs field dressing. The carrion has to be cleared before nightfall. Get to it, little pack princess. The task was disgusting, brutal, and leagues away from the embroidery and paperwork Amelia handled in the White Fang pack house. But Amelia simply nodded. She found a discarded bone knife, pulled the ruined silk of her gown up to her knees, and started working. She didn't complain. She didn't cry. She focused on the task with a grim, relentless dedication. She worked until her hands were blistered and bloody, until the scent of lavender was entirely overpowered by the stench of earth and gore. She knew Marga was watching, waiting for her to break. But Amelia remembered Lucas's cruel judgment, and the thought fueled her like fire. She would not be deemed too soft again. As twilight fell, Marga approached her. The older rogue's face held a flicker of something new, not respect, but perhaps reluctant intrigue. You didn't quit, Marga rasped. No, Amelia said simply, wiping her brow with a dirt-caked hand. I don't quit. Kale, standing nearby, watched the exchange. His lips didn't curve, but the cold calculation in his eyes softened just slightly. The Omega had grit. For the first time since her rejection, Amelia felt a subtle shift in her heart. She was still broken, but she was undeniably surviving. Chapter 4. Strength in Silence. Weeks bled into a grueling existence defined by cold stone and the rank scent of the rogue's den. Amelia's hands, once accustomed to fine lace and ink, were now calloused, perpetually scraped and stained with earth. She embraced the labor Marga forced upon her, chopping firewood, treating tough hides, and scavenging, not as punishment, but as a necessary shield. The physical exhaustion was a welcome distraction from the constant, gnawing pain of Lucas's rejection. The initial shock of her appearance, the tattered white gown still her only clothing, had faded into grudging acceptance. Amelia worked without complaint, and surprisingly without tears. She was silent, observant, and unfailingly meticulous. This quiet resilience baffled the rogues, who expected dramatics from a pack princess. One afternoon, a wave of chaos ripped through the camp. A small hunting party returned with a severely injured wolf named Finn. He had stumbled into a trap left by rival shifters, and his leg was mangled, a jagged, festering tear down to the bone. The rogues, masters of brute force, were useless against complex injury. They resorted to crude methods, tying a dirty cloth around the wound and debating whether to amputate with a dull blade. Finn's ragged whimpers cut through the den, and Kale stood nearby, his face grim. Losing a hunter meant losing vital resources, and the rogues could ill afford it. Amelia watched the chaos. In the White Fang pack house, basic battlefield medicine was a required study for any potential Luna, a skill meant for directing medics, not performing the task herself. But she remembered the detailed herbal remedies, the precise stitching techniques, and the critical need for sterilization. Ignoring Marga's sharp, warning glare, Amelia stepped forward. Her voice, though soft, carried an unexpected authority. "Stop," she commanded, kneeling beside the bleeding wolf. "If you do not clean this now, the infection will take him by morning, and that rag will only make it worse." Kale looked down at her, his eyes unreadable. "You claim competence, Omega." "I claim knowledge," Amelia stated, meeting his gaze directly. "The cut must be flushed with boiled water and sealed with the sap of the elder tree. That wound needs sutures, not a blunt hack. Finn was too weak to protest. Marga snarled, "If he dies, Omega, your death will be slow." Amelia ignored her. She quickly ordered a fire built and demanded clean water. Using a sterilized needle and thread, she managed to salvage from her ruined dress the only pack luxury she still possessed. She set to work. She worked with a focused intensity, stitching the wound with a precision that surprised even Kale. She pounded willow bark for pain and mixed a poultice from crushed herbs she had been silently identifying during her daily scavenging trips. She labored for 2 hours, blood soaking through the silk remnants of her sleeves. When she finally finished, Finn's feverish breathing was already easing. Kale stood over her, his colossal frame radiating quiet power. He had watched her entire performance, silent and still. He wasn't seeing the rejected Omega now, he was seeing an asset. "You saved him," Kale stated, the surprise barely masked by his rough tone. "I utilized training," Amelia corrected, utterly exhausted. "The strength of a pack lies not just in its warriors, but in its ability to sustain them. You have fighters. You lack logistics." Kale's eyes narrowed, a slow recognition dawning. The skills Lucas dismissed as soft organization, detailed knowledge, care, were, in the brutality of the rogue life, the difference between survival and death. "You will oversee all medical treatments and resource management," Kale announced to the stunned pack. Marga glowered but held her tongue. "This Omega is no longer just labor. She is vital." Amelia didn't gloat. She simply nodded, pulled out the needle, and started boiling it for the next inevitable injury. For the first time, she had earned her place, not through politics or mating, but through the quiet, unstoppable strength of her own mind. Chapter 5: Strategy and Silence, the Strategic Mind. Amelia's role as the den's medic and logistics coordinator quickly proved its worth. Injuries healed faster, and food supplies, though meager, were managed with ruthless efficiency, preventing unnecessary deaths. Yet, the rogues' fundamental problem persisted. They were constantly reacting to the territorial pressure from organized packs, particularly the small but aggressive Black River pack to the east. One evening, Kale gathered the few remaining hunters. Their faces were drawn, their frustration palpable. The Black River pack had aggressively pushed their boundaries, cutting off the rogues' most reliable hunting grounds and escalating the thefts of their hidden stashes. Kale slammed a fist onto the rough wooden table. "They push, we push back," he growled, the alpha power making the canyon walls tremble slightly. "We hit their central camp tonight, hard and fast. We take what we need, and we leave a message that Black River is ours." Marga and the warriors nodded, their bloodlust rising. A direct attack, the rogue solution. "We will lose 3 fighters, perhaps 4, Amelia stated calmly from the back of the group. Every eye snapped to her, Kale's gaze the sharpest of all. "You forget your place, Omega," he warned. "No, Alpha," Amelia countered, stepping forward and placing a map, a crude, detailed sketch she'd been drawing based on her foraging routes, onto the table. "I remember my place. My place was in a pack house where every single conflict was dissected before a single paw was placed wrong. If you attack Black River head-on, you will win, but the bloodshed will attract the White Fang patrols. They will find you weak and desperate, and they will wipe you out." Kale didn't argue the logic, only the audacity. "What is your proposal, then?" Amelia pointed to a small, unlabeled patch on the map. "Black River's Alpha, Gareth, is predictable. He prioritizes his personal wealth over his pack's welfare. His prized possession is the North Run trading post, where his best resources are stored. He relies on his southern patrols, viewing the North as too rugged to need heavy protection. Furthermore," she leaned closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "Gareth despises Lucas's beta. He's publicly stated he believes the White Fang beta's nephew has been poaching his northern territory." Kale watched her, his expression a mix of reluctant fascination and shock. This wasn't battlefield courage, this was political warfare. The skills Lucas dismissed as soft were actually tools of high-level manipulation. "We do not fight," Amelia proposed. "We send 2 silent, fast wolves through the lightly guarded northern route. We take the resources, and we leave a white fang pack marker, a discarded cloak perhaps, or a distinctive scent lure near the stolen stash. Marga scoffed. You want us to frame our enemy? That is dishonorable. It is strategic, Amelia corrected, looking Kale in the eye. Black River will retaliate against White Fang, not us. Our enemies will fight each other, and we get the resources without losing a single wolf. Kale stared at the map, then at Amelia. She didn't waver. He was Alpha, a creature of instinct and brute force, but Amelia was offering a plan that saved lives and ensured long-term safety. With a heavy, grudging sigh, Kale made his decision. Do it, he ordered, pointing to two of his quickest scouts. Follow the Omega's route. If a single wolf is harmed, the blame falls to you, Amelia. The scouts left quickly. The hours that followed were tense. But by dawn, the scouts returned, weary but unharmed, laden with enough supplies to feed the den for a month. More importantly, they reported hearing Black River patrols already mobilizing, not to find the rogues, but to confront the White Fang borders. Kale approached Amelia as she tended the fire. He didn't offer praise, but his acknowledgement was far more profound. You knew the weakness of our enemies better than I knew the strength of my own pack, he conceded, the rough edges of his voice slightly smoother. He looked at her tattered dress, then at her fierce, intelligent eyes. You were not trained to be a Luna for a warrior, Omega. You were trained to be a queen maker. Amelia did not smile. She simply stacked another piece of wood, the cold knowledge of her true value sinking deep into her bones. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was directing the entire pack's future. The rejected Omega was now Kale's silent, indispensable strategist. Chapter 6: The Unbreakable Bond. Winter descended upon the canyon with savage force. The dense snow was both a shield and a prison, isolating the rogue den from the outside world, but choking off their already thin supply lines. Survival wasn't a choice. It was a daily, brutal negotiation. Kale's reliance on Amelia grew from professional necessity to absolute trust. When an epidemic of cough and fever threatened to fell the younger wolves, he ignored Marga's brutal suggestion to simply isolate the sick. Instead, he implemented Amelia's strict quarantine and herbal treatment regime. When the scouts reported a near-empty storage cave, Kale didn't roar in frustration. He turned to Amelia, waiting for her logistical analysis. We have 2 weeks of dried meat, she reported, her voice calm despite the gravity of the situation. The risk of open hunting is too high. We must use the mountain pass trap lines. It is dangerous but efficient. Kale didn't question her judgment. You map the route, I'll lead the run. Their dynamic was a source of constant tension for the older rogues. Marga and others saw a weak Omega usurping their Alpha's time, but they couldn't argue with the results. While other isolated packs were starving, the rogue den was surviving. The true test came during the perilous mountain run. A sudden rock slide, triggered by the shifting snow, caught Kale and his lead hunter off guard. They returned battered, bruised, and nearly frozen. The hunter had a broken leg and a severe concussion. Kale, though stoic, had a deep, jagged gash across his forearm, a wound that refused to close due to a splinter of rock lodged deep inside. The injury was in his dominant arm, debilitating his ability to even shift fully. The sight of their powerful Alpha compromised sent a tremor of fear through the den. Kale submitted himself to Amelia's care in the main cave, a rare show of vulnerability. His massive frame barely fit in the small space. I need to extract the rock, Amelia said, her face taut with concentration as she examined the swelling wound. It will be painful. You must not shift. You must remain still. Kale, used to fighting through every pain, merely nodded, clenching his jaw. Just do it. The process was excruciating. Amelia worked by the flickering light of an oil lamp, using a sterilized bone shard as a surgical probe. She needed to concentrate fiercely to avoid nicking a major vein. The scent of blood and Kale's barely suppressed alpha-level pain filled the air. She could feel the enormous power radiating from him, the instinctual urge to lash out. At one point, as she pressed down to loosen the shard, Kale's hand shot out not to stop her, but to brace himself against the cold stone. She saw the raw agony reflected in his dark eyes, but she did not stop. "Breathe, Alpha," she murmured, her voice a low, steady anchor against the storm of his pain. "Focus on the end result." She finished the extraction, cleaned and tightly stitched the wound. As she carefully wrapped the final bandage, she looked up and saw Kale staring at her, his eyes clear for the first time. The mask of the Alpha had slipped, revealing the man beneath, burdened, tired, and deeply reliant. "You didn't hesitate," he rasped, his voice barely a whisper. "You worked through my pain as if it were your own." Amelia met his gaze, her own reflection showing exhaustion and a fierce dedication. "If you fall, Alpha, the den falls. My survival is your survival." "No," Kale corrected her, his large, rough hand, the uninjured one, hovering near her shoulder before dropping back to his side. "Your survival is your strength. You make us better. You make us whole." It was the closest he had ever come to an admission of emotional need. In that moment, the Alpha and the Omega transcended their titles. Their bond was forged not by biology or romance, but by the shared, gritty necessity of keeping their community alive. Amelia knew then that this bond, of mutual respect and survival, was infinitely stronger than the empty promise of a political mating she had been rejected from. Chapter 7. The White Fang Betrayal. The first warning was the scent, lavender and polished leather, cold and artificial, slicing through the den's natural aroma of pine and smoke. Organized, efficient, and utterly contemptuous. White Fang patrols had breached their territory. Amelia was overseeing the repair of the main storage cave when the shouts began. She emerged to see 4 perfectly groomed White Fang warriors, led by Owen, Lucas's head beta, standing at the canyon entrance. Owen, immaculate in his dark, tailored coat, looked down upon the den with blatant disgust. "There she is," Owen sneered, spotting Amelia instantly. "The Omega who disgraced our Alpha, Amelia the deserter." Kale strode forward, his massive form filling the space between Amelia and the intruders. His presence was a wall of raw, unrestrained power. The rogue pack emerged silently from the shadows, their eyes gleaming, ready to fight. "You trespass on my territory," Kale growled, his voice a low, warning rumble. "State your purpose or leave your teeth behind." Owen scoffed, running a gloved hand over his smooth, dark hair. "We are here for property, rogue. We tracked a captured wolf, and he conveniently led us to the runaway Omega. She is registered property of the White Fang pack, a debt repaid in service. Hand her over, and we will consider this a mistake." Amelia's hands clenched into fists. She wasn't an Omega who had merely run away. She was a political debt, a piece of furniture. She stepped out from behind Kale, the tattered remains of her wedding dress now stained with earth, but her posture unyielding. "I am no longer property," Amelia declared, her voice resonating with a clarity that cut through the tension. She looked directly at Owen, ignoring the faint, sickening scent of Lucas's political ambition clinging to him. "I accept Lucas Carson's rejection. I renounce the name and the debt. My ties to the White Fang pack are severed." Owen laughed, a sharp, dismissive sound. "You cannot renounce what you never owned, girl. You are worthless without our protection. Come now, and perhaps Alpha Lucas will lessen your public punishment." As Owen took a step toward her, Kale reacted. It wasn't a roar of battle, but a sound infinitely more terrifying. A deep, visceral Alpha snarl of possession and territorial defense. "She is under my protection," Kale stated, his eyes glowing gold. "She is essential to my den. You will address her with respect, or you will not address her at all." Owen, arrogant but not stupid, hesitated. He had expected a weak Omega and a scattered band of rogues. He was faced with a highly organized defense and an Alpha whose fury was palpable. "This Omega is a liar and a weakness, Kale," Owen spat, trying a different tactic. "Take her, and the White Fang pack will never stop hunting you." Amelia, calm amid the storm, spoke again. "You cannot afford to hunt him. The Black River pack has mobilized on your southern border after the recent raids you blame on your beta's inept nephew. Your forces are spread thin. You have neither the manpower nor the time to fight a civil war with the rogues over a worthless Omega. Amelia had thrown Kale's own strategy back in Owen's face, revealing the depth of the internal political intelligence she possessed. The White Fang Beta's smug facade finally cracked. He was beaten, outmaneuvered not by muscle, but by intellect. "This isn't over, Omega," Owen hissed, backing away. "You have chosen a slow death with the trash of the territories." "I chose freedom, Beta," Amelia countered, meeting his glare with a cold, steady fire. The White Fang patrol retreated. A collective exhale swept through the den. They had won a victory against their most feared enemy, and it was the Omega who had provided the crucial shield. Kale turned slowly to Amelia. The adrenaline was fading, leaving a tense silence. He reached out and gently brushed a smudge of dirt from her cheek. His touch was rough, yet deliberate, an intimate gesture of acknowledgement. "They will come again," Kale warned softly. "Then we will be ready again," Amelia replied, her heart swelling not with fear, but with a fierce sense of belonging. She looked out at the rogues, her pack, and knew she was home. Her rejection had not killed her. It had brought her to the life she was truly meant to lead. Chapter 8. The Hidden Truth. The rogue den settled into a wary peace after the White Fang confrontation, but a different internal tension thrummed beneath the surface. Amelia was hailed as a hero, not for fighting, but for her quiet, crushing defeat of Owen's arrogance. Yet, every eye watching her was a reminder of her precarious place. Late that night, after the guards had changed shifts and the cave fire had died down to embers, Kale found Amelia near the mouth of the canyon. She was studying her tattered map under the cold glow of the full moon, tracing the newly secured hunting routes. Kale approached silently, his movements smooth and economical. The raw, woodsy scent of his alpha shift, a mixture of rain, earth, and something uniquely electric, enveloped her. "You should be resting," he murmured, standing so close that she felt the heat radiating from his massive body. "And you, Alpha," Amelia countered, not looking up. "Your arm needs warmth to set. The defiance you showed Owen drained you." Kale leaned against the stone wall beside her. "I couldn't let him take you," he admitted, his voice barely a breath. It wasn't a romantic confession. It was a simple statement of fact, a hunter protecting his most crucial asset. "The den needs your mind. I could not lead effectively if I had to constantly worry about how to replace your strategic thought." Amelia finally looked up, meeting his direct gaze. The admission of reliance was more profound than any flattery. "We are stronger together," she acknowledged, the words sounding less like a promise and more like a law of nature. The air grew heavy. Amelia felt a strange, internal warmth spreading from her chest, a heat that had nothing to do with the cool night air. Her heart began to beat a rapid, anxious rhythm that felt strangely synchronized with Kale's deep, steady pulse. Then Kale shifted, his eyes widening. A primal, dark energy flared around him, and a low, possessive rumble vibrated in his chest. His hand, uninjured, shot out not to grasp, but to hover protectively over the back of Amelia's neck, the space where the mate claim would sit. Amelia's breath hitched. Her usually subdued inner wolf, the one Lucas had called weak, suddenly surged, roaring into her mind. It wasn't a howl of fear, but a fierce, joyous recognition. The instinct was overwhelming, shattering the carefully constructed emotional walls she had built since her rejection. "Mine, mate, Alpha," the primal truth echoed in the silence. Kale's gaze was locked on her, confusion slowly melting into a terrifying certainty. "The scent," he whispered, his voice thick with raw alpha need. "The scent of your wolf, it's changed. It's ours." Amelia felt the undeniable pull, the deep, biological certainty that had been cruelly denied by Lucas. The bond was not a faint whisper, but a seismic shock. Lucas had been a political convenience. Kale was destiny. "It can't be," Amelia breathed, terrified by the implications. A rogue alpha and a rejected omega. Their mate bond was the most politically explosive combination imaginable. "I was rejected. The bond was broken." Kale shook his head, his eyes burning with a sudden, devastating clarity. That was a political rejection, Amelia, a verbal cruelty. The true bond was never made because it was never meant to be his. He stepped closer, his powerful body radiating an intensity that demanded submission and partnership in equal measure. This is real. I am your mate, and you are mine. The realization was a heavy, glorious burden. It meant the White Fang pack would now view Kale not just as a rogue, but as a thief who had stolen their property and their alpha's fated mate. Their war had just become personal, irreversible, and deeply rooted in the most sacred law of the wolf world. Kale gently reached out and cupped her face, his thumb brushing away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. "We face this, Amelia," he vowed, his alpha command directed only at her, sealing their fate. "We face this as mates. We build our own pack, our own laws. You are the Luna I never knew I was waiting for." Amelia leaned into his touch, her inner wolf purring with contentment and fierce pride. The rejected Omega was gone. In her place stood a woman defined by her true mate and her true power. Chapter 9. The Luna declared. The next morning, the air in the rogue den crackled with an energy far more volatile than the tension of a White Fang raid. Every wolf in the canyon had scented the truth, the powerful, unmistakable blend of Alpha Kale's dominance and the quiet, deep resonance of Amelia's true mate scent. Kale called an assembly near the central fire pit. His expression was granite, his eyes holding the gravity of a man who was about to defy the ancient laws of the territories. Amelia stood beside him, her spine straight, her worn cloak covering her tattered wedding gown. She was no longer trembling, she was ready. Kale surveyed his pack, scavengers, outcasts, and fighters who lived by his singular rule. 2 sunrises ago, the White Fang Beta came for the Omega, Kale announced, his voice carrying an unassailable authority. They called her a debt, a runaway, and a source of weakness. They were wrong on all counts. He turned, placing his massive hand on Amelia's shoulder, a gesture that was both possessive and protective. Amelia is no longer bound by the White Fang pack. Her life is her own, and her future is here. His gaze intensified, sweeping over the pack. Last night, the moon revealed what the packs denied. Amelia is my true mate. She is the Luna of this den. A collective gasp swept through the assembled rogues. They had accepted her as a strategist, a medic, and a valued asset. But a Luna? The title felt too grand, too tied to the very pack laws they rejected. As expected, Marga stepped forward, her scarred features twisted in disbelief. "Alpha, with respect, we survived Lucas's arrogance. We cannot afford the luxury of fate. Taking a rejected Omega as your Luna is a declaration of war against the most powerful pack in the territory. It will bring death." Kale merely lifted an eyebrow, allowing the dissent. But before Marga could continue, Amelia stepped forward, placing herself just ahead of Kale, her small stature belying the immense confidence radiating from her. "War is already here, Marga," Amelia stated, her voice quiet but piercing. She didn't argue against Marga's fear, she validated it with cold logic. "If Alpha Kale had surrendered me, the White Fang pack would have seen us as weak and claimed this territory within a moon cycle. My rejection gives them a flimsy excuse. Our survival is the true insult." She unrolled a fresh, large map of the territories. The air of a political strategist, the same one she used in the White Fang pack house, now settled on her like a crown. "The White Fang pack will retaliate within 72 hours. They will not send patrols. They will send a war party, led by Alpha Lucas himself," Amelia predicted with devastating precision. "They will attack through the northern gorge, believing we are still recovering from the Black River skirmish." She then pointed to 3 distinct locations on the map. "We will use the knowledge of the canyon, the hidden spring, the choke point above the main trail, and the old mine shaft. We do not fight their full force. We use the terrain. We set traps, reroute the spring, and create the illusion of an overwhelming defense at the choke point. They will face a battle of attrition, not brute force." Amelia looked Marga directly in the eye. "Alpha Kale has given you a Luna who understands how the enemies think. I know their weakness, their vanity, and their protocols because they are mine. I am not a weakness. I am your secret weapon." Silence fell. Amelia hadn't claimed her rank. She had earned it in the moment of its declaration. The raw power of Kale's acceptance coupled with Amelia's undeniable strategy silenced every doubt. Marga, after a long, hard stare, dropped her gaze and gave a grudging nod. "Luna Amelia's plan stands," she grunted. With the descent quelled and the path forward clear, Kale took Amelia's hand and led her back toward the deepest, most private part of the den. The pack watched, knowing they were witnessing a sacred ritual. Kale led her to a quiet sanctuary near the heart of the canyon, a place where the earth itself felt ancient. He gently pushed aside the tattered silk of her wedding dress and exposed the back of her neck, the site of the mate claim. He looked into her eyes, no longer as Alpha and Omega, but as equals facing destiny. "You choose this," he stated, the question echoing the gravity of the eternal bond. "I choose freedom. I choose strength. I choose you," Amelia replied, her heart beating a frantic, joyous drum against her ribs. Kale lowered his head, his lips brushing the sensitive skin of her neck. His sharp, deep bite was quick, precise, and absolute. It wasn't an act of violence, but of completion. A flash of blinding, golden light enveloped them both, and a wave of raw power flooded Amelia's body, solidifying the bond and the knowledge that she was now fully connected to the rogue Alpha. The pain was quickly replaced by a profound sense of home. Amelia was marked, claimed, and utterly whole. She lifted her face to the light, no longer the timid girl who had fled a pack, but the fierce Luna of her own making, ready to face the war with her true mate at her side. Chapter 10. The Alpha's Fall. 72 hours after the bond claim, the forest erupted. Alpha Lucas, driven by blind rage and wounded pride, arrived precisely as Luna Amelia had predicted, through the tight, vulnerable northern gorge. He had brought 24 of his strongest warriors, convinced the encounter would be a simple, bloody annihilation of a few disorganized rogues. Lucas himself was magnificent, pure white fur, bulked up from years of elite training, radiating an arrogance that choked the mountain air. "Surround them," he roared, his voice echoing through the canyon. "Take the Omega alive and kill the rogue Alpha." But the canyon was silent. There was no direct defense, only the chilling stillness of the trap. As the White Fang warriors charged the choke point, the earth beneath them liquefied. Amelia had ordered the spring rerouted. The ground, now mud-soaked and slick, instantly broke the White Fang's synchronized charge. They stumbled, slipping over hidden nets and jagged rocks the rogues had positioned. The order that defined the White Fang pack dissolved into chaos. Then the rogues struck. They did not engage in large-scale combat. Instead, they darted out from the elevated shelters and shadowed cliffs, utilizing their knowledge of the terrain. Quick, brutal strikes to isolate the slipping warriors, and then melting back into the shadows. Amelia's intelligence had given them a massive advantage. They fought smart, not hard. The battle turned into a frustrating quagmire for Lucas. He saw his warriors falling to simple, well-placed traps. Fury blinding him, he pushed through the muddled fighting, seeking the one person he blamed for the chaos: Kale. Kale met him at the base of the central fire pit. Kale was rougher, darker, a true creature of the wild, standing next to Amelia. Lucas let out a guttural roar, charging without thought. "You stole my property, rogue," Lucas howled. "I claimed my mate, Alpha," Kale countered, his tone heavy with truth. Their clash was ferocious. Lucas relied on practiced moves, taught in training arenas. Kale relied on sheer survival instinct, his movements savage and unpredictable. But Kale had a power Lucas lacked, the profound, visceral strength of the mate bond. Every strike Kale landed was fueled by the need to protect Amelia, the woman who had brought life and purpose back to his den. Lucas managed to land a crippling blow to Kale's side, but before he could follow up, Amelia's voice sliced through the din. "Lucas," she yelled, stepping forward, drawing his attention. "You fear weakness, but it is your arrogance that will kill you. Your pack is losing because you value status over survival. They are fighting a ghost war you don't even understand." The distraction was momentary, but fatal. Kale lunged, using the distraction to lock his jaws onto Lucas's shoulder. Lucas howled, not just from pain, but from the sudden, shocking realization that he had been outmaneuvered by the worthless Omega he'd rejected. Kale forced the defeated Alpha down, pressing his weight onto him. The fight was over. Lucas lay pinned, defeated by a rogue and the woman he'd scorned. "Speak the truth, Lucas," Kale commanded, his voice a low vibration of dominance that compelled obedience. "Speak it or die here." Lucas struggled, his powerful form trembling under Kale's weight. Finally, broken and humiliated, he let the truth spill out. "She, Amelia, she was my true mate," he whispered, his voice cracking. I rejected the bond for political gain." The revelation stunned the remaining White Fang warriors who had survived the skirmish. Lucas's confession of political treachery and his own mate rejection shattered the very foundation of his authority. Kale released him, standing tall with Amelia at his side. The war was won, not with death, but with a devastating truth. Amelia stepped forward, now the undisputed Luna. She faced the defeated White Fang wolves, her eyes firm but compassionate. "Your Alpha's choice was driven by ambition, not honor. You are now packless," she stated. "But you are not without choices. You can run, become rogues, or you can join us. Here, loyalty is earned and intelligence is strength. Kale's pack welcomes any wolf seeking a true home." One by one, the defeated White Fang warriors, disgusted by their former Alpha's betrayal, dropped their heads in submission to Kale. In the aftermath, Amelia and Kale stood atop the canyon, watching the last of the White Fang surrender. The den was no longer a makeshift refuge. It was the foundation of a new pack. "You are the shield, the mind, and the heart of this pack," Kale whispered, turning to his Luna. Amelia smiled, the first genuine, unrestrained smile since her rejection day. The silk dress was gone, replaced by rugged, functional leather, and the scent of lavender was replaced by the warm, earthy fragrance of freedom. "We built a home out of a betrayal," she replied. Together, they decreed a new name for their territory, the Shadow-Bound Pack, a testament to their rejection of the light and their ultimate fated connection. Amelia, the rejected Omega, had not just found a mate. She had forged a destiny, proving that true power is found not in belonging to others, but in choosing oneself.